Every single person on this planet agrees that these pieces are worth these many points. But when I ask you about the king, you probably need a second to think. You might say 3 because it's similar to a knight, maybe 4 because it's a little less valuable than a rook, but I'm here to tell you it's way more complicated than that. And the answer isn't what you think, and I'm gonna prove it to you. Now before we go any further, I know what you're thinking. Yes, if you do lose the king, the game does end. So technically the king should be worth infinity, right? But for the purposes of this video, we'll be stripping the king of its royal privilege and analyzing it based on the value it provides as just a regular piece in chess. Now, if we asked the question to a chess engine like Stockfish, it would spit out 200 points in an instant. But this number is arbitrary. The reason is so the algorithm powering the engine knows to treat the king as the most valuable piece, and so the sum of all the enemy pieces wouldn't be equal to the king. By the way, this is what allows engines to find those crazy lines where you sacrifice all your pieces for a checkmate. But if we replace the 200 with say 500 or even 1000, you'd get the same engine results. There's just nothing special about the 200. Now on first glance, you'd be correct to assume that the king is worth somewhere around a knight or a rook. It can cover a maximum of 8 squares in one move and 24 in the next. Comparing this with a knight and a bishop, we see that the numbers are actually pretty similar. But there's more to the story. Knights can fork and have the ability to jump over pieces, and while bishops can only cover half the board, they can pin pieces together and have unlimited range on each move. Hell, even pawns can move 2 steps on his first move and have the ability to be promoted. But kings, they can't do any of that. But before we label the king as pathetic, we need to realize that they are special in just the way that they move. Aside from queens, kings are the only other piece that can move in every direction. Basically, it's just a nerfed queen that can only move 1 square at a time. But square coverage is only part of the picture. Just like how 2 bishops are better than 2 knights, or an open rook is better than an inactive rook, we need to consider the context in which chess is played. In opening and middle games, even if the king is safe from checkmate, we know damn well no one is bringing the king, of all pieces, into the attack. The king is just too slow, moving 1 square at a time. And on top of that, a king can't jump over pieces, so it'll take even more steps just to clear out a path. But to be honest, the king is actually an excellent defender. Since it can cover a square area, it's quite good at defending a lot of pawns or pieces at the same time. Another thing we haven't mentioned is castling. While this can only be done once per side in a match, it does activate the rook, which has to count for something. Even though a king is nowhere near as useful as a knight or bishop during these stages of a chess match, kings are more mobile and useful than a pawn, so it's only fair to assign the king 1.5 points of value in the opening and middle game. Now, the endgame is where the king really starts to make an impact. It's common endgame technique to activate your king, since it's probably one of the only powerful pieces left in the game. In fact, a king is better at attacking a group of pawns than a knight, and defending them than a bishop. Kings are also great at escorting pawns to promotion, since they can cover a 3 square area each move. And unlike knights and bishops, a king can also block an enemy pawn and threaten to capture it at the same time. But still, a king is not up to par compared to a rook. Rooks basically do what kings do in the endgame, but a lot better. Like they're faster at attacking enemy pieces, defending its own troops, and more useful at escorting pawns to promotion. I mean, all you gotta do is stick a rook behind a pawn and watch the pawn become a knight. Queen. Considering all this, a king should be valued greater than 3 in the endgame, since it's better than a knight and a bishop, but less than 5 because it's not as good as a rook. So 4 points is fair. And when we average it out, we get a value of 2.33. And this number does make sense. Kings are more valuable than pawns, but less valuable than any minor piece for the majority of a chess match. But we're overlooking something you probably haven't realized. Everyone starts out with 2 knights, 2 bishops, 2 rooks, but only 1 king. It might not mean much, but since we're considering the king as a regular piece, we need to take into account its trade value when evaluating how many points it's worth. After all, that's pretty much the only thing the point value system is good for. Because it's the only piece of its kind, a king should be slightly more valuable. If it does get traded out for a knight, your opponent still has another knight, but you don't have anything to replace the king. So I think it's only fair we bump our friend the king a little to a new final score of 2.5. So after our deep and very legitimate analysis, the king is the second weakest piece on the board. But that's what makes the game of chess work. Imagine trying to checkmate a queen. There would be no concept of stalemate, and checkmate would basically be impossible. So now that you know what the king is worth, keep that in mind when you offer it up in a trade next time. Well, maybe in chess 2.0.